Be great if you can share a little bit about your thoughts on trends in the food industry.
So I think at a macro level on the investment side, and then I'll talk about the food side. I think that now more than ever, it's easier to get access to capital, which I don't know anyone that would have assumed that that would be an outcome of COVID, or towards the tail end of COVID that would be the case. But we've actually seen now more than ever businesses getting the funds that they need to continue to grow, and part of it just may have to do with the end in sight here, and also through COVID a lot of companies just going away and closing or pausing a fundraise or just not pursuing that idea for lots of different reasons. And so I think the supply of companies that are looking for funds, at least in our world, has been weeded out in a lot of ways. So I think that's been interesting to see. I think on the food side, again, I think you said it well, Julia, there's been a tremendous acceleration of trends in food that are, influencing our daily lives, direct to consumer, grocery acquisition. Every brand now needs to have a direct consumer strategy. They need to be selling online. We've seen, a lot around the vertical farming space. Countries through COVID have realized for countries that import a lot of their food, 80-90% of their food, in some cases in parts of the Middle East, they realize how difficult it has been from a supply chain perspective to get access to the foods that they typically import for, the feeding their population. And so we've seen a lot of interest on behalf of those countries and startups that are working in vertical farming and indoor agriculture and the growing of food in controlled environments to be able to, supply people in that local region with food. So that's been a really, really interesting one that has been, all along, the last 10 years, that's been an interesting area for new startup development, but not until recently, I think, has it become an agenda item on behalf of countries that need to feed people. Furthermore, I think as we think about the future, and everyone always refers to 2050, there's going to be 10 billion people on the planet. How do we feed that many people? Protein being the ingredient of our time, really, has undergone a lot of change, and there's been a lot of startup activity in that space. So thinking about alternative protein, given the impact and degradation that animal protein has had in our environment, there's been this tremendous wave of businesses. I think, Impossible Burger, Beyond Meat, Memphis Meats have launched 1,000 ships in their wake. And so we're seeing a lot going on the plant-based protein side with new pulses and legumes that are able to be processed for protein sources, as well as cellular agriculture, which is basically the creation of very familiar, lobsters, crab, beef, pork, poultry in labs, as opposed to having to raise a whole animal to be able to get that type of meat. And so those have been, just kind of fascinating areas for us to explore on the investment side, because those businesses in cellular agriculture are in their very early stage. They're, very few have gotten to the point of commercialization. In fact, I think it's in Singapore that the first lab-based chicken nugget was just put on a restaurant menu. So we're just trying to see, those products come to market. But, and thinking about, how do those companies scale up? Does the supply chain exist for being able to make, tons and tons and tons of lab-based protein? Do we have bioreactors big enough to be able to, bring that product to the masses? So we've been thinking a lot about that these days, and at Branch Venture Group, and I think actually Boston is playing a leading role in that discussion and in that innovation, because so many of the labs at local universities have the resources to be able to support people that are really interested in that space. And so that's been a big emerging trend that has only continued to grow, I think, in COVID.